Hey, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our expert guests. Uh, it's an honor for us, and this workshop will be recorded for people that couldn't join us today, but they for sure will use this workshop. So, and it will be circulated across the partnership, the EU-Efficient partnership. So, this is the third workshop of this series, and this time we have Sergio Terzi as an expert in advanced manufacturing. He is a professor of industrial technologies and design and management of production system. So his main research interests are in the field of advanced and smart manufacturing, with a special focus to the role of digital technologies and sustainability. Dan is also serving as a delegate to the international relationship for the Department of Management, Economics and Industrial Engineering, which is the one I am working for, and is also serving as an associate dean in the Graduate School of Management. So we have here a really important expert on the topic and also a really important academic. And today he is going to hold this workshop in this industry 5.0, how manufacturing should evolve in these modern times. So I wanted to steal any time from him. So we are going to enjoy this workshop, and the people later will enjoy the recording of this workshop. So please share your slide and tell me if I missed something in your description, in your bio. And thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Omar. Don't worry, we're not missing anything, nothing relevant. And welcome everybody. For me, it's a pleasure to be online with you, and it's always a pleasure to interact with colleagues around the world, around Europe, but in this case, sharing some food. As I was saying, sorry, I don't know actually the background of the participant and of the possible also participant that we will listen to maybe to the recording. So I've prepared a presentation that should be, how to say, I don't want to say general, but at least not too much technical. It's not, let's say, a scientific paper in some way, okay? But anyhow, obviously inside there are some of my ideas. Who I am has been already said. So I would like to start with the elephant in the room that is relevant for today, but should, in my modest opinion, relevant for our life. That is this situation. The fact that clearly we are living in a sustainable, we live in a sustainable model. And there is now a list of clear impacts in our planet. Definitely, it's the time to change, to find a way to change. At least I fully believe so. Honestly speaking, what I'm saying is not new at all. The same concept of sustainable development that, in my modest opinion, is really a perfect definition in some way. I read this book a couple of times, and even if it has almost now 40 years, I fully believe that there is a lot of knowledge and strategic vision there. So it's more than 40 years that in some way we know, we have written, and at the highest level that is possible, at least in our society, what to do, how to change our domain. Or better, maybe in that book is written what we would like to do in some way. It's a vision. That book itself, coming from the Brundtland Commission, at that time was obviously a political book in some way, a statement. I'm belonging to a school of management. Personally, I'm an engineer. As Omar was saying, I'm an industrial engineer. I mean, I'm teaching, let's say, industrial courses. So as an engineer, I fully believe that, okay, to make it happen, we should do something. No? And engineers are in charge, as many others, to work on the how. The good point of the how is that I will tell you in a while, we know what to do. And we know also how to do it. It's just a matter of doing it. Just for being on the same page, and as I said, without knowing the background of the participant, I'm used to start with, let's say, this question. Here you see two chairs. Now, one is paper-based. For your knowledge, Comieco was the path name of the Italian association that is in charge of managing paper waste. So at the end of the day, they recycle and reusing paper. And the other one is I've decided this design that is called Savonarola, since it was quite, let's say, famous and was one of the most famous one in the, obviously for kings and queens at the time of Savonarola, so 500 years ago. If we look at these two chairs, which is the most sustainable one? Now, sorry, we are among few persons, but I know the time is running. If you don't mind, I will give you just my solution without maybe doing conversation now. Maybe we can save some time later for question or comment, more comment than question. I mean, it's not easy to define it. We should have at least the same functional unit as a reference. And here there is an important point, that is time. Sustainability, it's a matter of time. A sustainable product, it's a matter of time. I don't know how many persons have used this Savonarola chair that maybe today you can find in a museum or let's say in some castles, but for sure some hundreds. And the paper-based chair, even if it's coming from recycled paper, will not last some hundreds of, how to say, seated persons. So for doing this chair, for doing the function of this chair, we need some of our, this is just a representation. I was not counting actually how much, this should be said. So here there is an important concept. Sustainability, it's a matter of time. So if we want to say what is sustainable, we should look at the time. Or other way of saying, we should look at the life cycle. The life cycle, it's, this Cristina Rossi is calling me now, Homer, I don't know why. Okay, I guess that is not about this. The concept of life cycle, it's a concept that is part of all of us. All of us, we born, we live, and then at a certain point we have an end of life. This is valid in nature, so it's a concept coming from nature, but it's valid in our industrial society. Every artifact that we have in our hands, it has been designed, it has been produced, obviously. Then, and this is the so-called beginning of life. This definition is not mine, it's coming from the European Commission. We have the middle of life utilization phase, and as well, obviously, everything that we use at a certain point, we have an end of life. So if we want to define what is sustainable, more sustainable, less sustainable, what is sustainable or unsustainable, we should look at the time, or as we're saying, we should look at the life cycle of this solution. Could it be an artifact, could it be a factory, could it be a product, could it be a service, could it be a company, whatever. First important concept that, as we will see later, it's very important for trying to find a way, for finding a way that is more sustainable than the present one. Other important, let's say, some other concept, not just one. Let's imagine to be a car maker. How a car maker could become more sustainable. I'm using the example of the car for two reasons. All of us, probably, or most of us, we are driving and using cars. Second, the car industry, in my modest opinion, as an industrial engineer, is still and will be, for some other years, the most important industry in the world. And not by chance, the car industry has already done a lot for being more sustainable. So a car maker can become more sustainable working on the product. We can design a car, just for example, making it lighter. And this was happening. Not by chance today, most of our cars are plastic based. Actually, for this practical tentative to make them lighter and so consume less. We can work on the processes. A car maker is based on a long list of factories, and all these factories for producing components, artifacts, whatever, they need processes that today we are no more accepting that they can pollute. And again, this is what's coming in Europe. Most a car industry, car factory today is almost next to zero pollution in some way. Obviously, and it is something that is happening in this moment, we can redesign the car. For example, changing or using alternative fuels, or moving from thermal engine to electrical engine. We can also redesign what a car is used for. That means transportation. And this is opening a list of alternatives, from just supporting the car sharing to changing the infrastructure that we have around us. Till the point that maybe we can think that instead of working on the car, we can work on what is around the car. The car that is normally used for commuting, let's say, from your home to your office. If we just work on distance, we reduce in some way the utilization of the car. So I'm using the example of a car maker since, as I said, this industry has already done all these steps. And if you just pay attention to this, for sure, you will see in your mind, in your brain, let's say, examples of these possible solutions that are around us, introduced by a car maker. In fact, here there is the good point that I was mentioning, that how to be more sustainable should not be invented. Has been already in some way written, codified, experimented, evaluated, tested, adopted, and so on. Here I'm just mentioning some books. Obviously, the titles could be different. We talk about eco-design, we talk about design for sustainability, we talk about natural capitalism, we talk about organic economy, and so on. But at the end of the day, at the essence of these, let's say, books, of these models, behind there are always some activities that should be done. Now, as I said, I'm an engineer, and in engineering, we talk about design strategies. When we design a new system, it could be a new product, a new factory, a new artifact, a new technology, whatever, we have in mind some design strategies, what should be done. Here there is another important element. Sustainability cannot come or cannot happen by chance. Should happen, is happening by design. What does it mean happening by design? Which are these design strategies? There are plenty of strategies. I'm personally using this list that is coming from this book, Natural Capitalism, that has been written by a couple of American colleagues, economic background, that they say that there are 4 important strategies. The first one is reduce the impact. The impact is the environmental impact. We should design systems for reducing or avoiding any negative impact. Dot. Using as much as possible the best knowledge and the best technology that we have, and avoiding to do something that is not needed. Second, and here we will see why it's so related to the concept of life cycle, reuse, recycle, remanufacturing, what are the so-called design for art? And as I said, sustainability is not coming by chance, it's coming by design. Third, in trying to reduce the impact and reuse material, often we can find a way to increase the productivity of our resources. So to improve the way in which we use what we have already. The optimization of consumption fuel. But as well, also the fact that we change and we adopt a new technology, normally called the green technology, since in this way, we will get much more of what we will pay for. It's a matter of increasing our productivity. There is also another domain. Sustainability could be achieved, also design the systems in its complexity till the point that we can design the business model. A very simple example is that one of servitization and, for example, car rental or car sharing. Car sharing, car rental is actually a way of that and of providing mobility instead of selling car, selling mobility service. And not by chance today in our, let's say, at least in the big cities, we have this solution in place. As I said, there is the important concept of life cycle. And as I said, life cycle is coming from nature. Being back to nature, in nature, life cycle is not open, it's closed. It's a closed circle, by definition. So, and also in our domain, in our industrial society, if we close the loop of the life cycle, our artifact, component, system, product, factories, whatever, we can improve its sustainability. And then here we enter in the big domain of how to manage the end of life cycle of our system or artifact. The interesting point, at least in my opinion, and in fact in these last years, I spent a lot of effort. Also, if you look at my publication, most of them are in this concept. Personally, I believe that working for designing closed chains and closed system, making them circular, that is the way that at least in Europe is used to define this model. By definition, we will design systems that will be more sustainable. This is the big concept of circular economy, as it is today called in Europe. It has changed the name several times. At the beginning, Style, that is one of the father, maybe the father of this, at the end of the 90s, was calling it the performance economy. Then in US, they have called it the natural capitalism. Then again, in Europe, it has been called the data economy, or whatever. Anyhow, in the time being, at least in Europe, we address this concept with these names. Circular economy. So shifting our model, our industrial society, and the model behind our industrial society in an open one, in a closed one, or better to say, in a circular way, is a very practical way for transforming our society at least in a more sustainable one, without, at the end of the day, without changing what we will like, what we are. We are Homo economicus. We are used to use artifact. We are used to improve and augment ourselves through new technologies. Instead of developing them and then wasting them, as much as possible, we are able to implement this closed circle, more we will be sustainable. Obviously, what I said is nothing new, I guess. At least for me, what is not new, but I mean, so far, let's say there are no extraordinary ideas about what I said. It is just my personal perspective on this life cycle domain concept. And for sure, sustainability is not just a matter of this. And in fact, there are plenty of other books, suggestions, whatever, strategies for becoming more sustainable. And here, I'm now ready to move to the next step in my presentation. So, and again, my engineering background is coming out in some way. We're in 2025, and in the last 250 years of industrial evolution, we had always some arrows in our folder. And most of these arrows, they were based on the fact that as humankind, we have evolved in the design, implementation, and adoption of technologies. Technology is coming from Greek techne, that means artifact. So we have improved our way of designing, producing, and using artifacts. Generally speaking, we call this the evolution, the technological evolution that is part of our humankind. So as I said, we are in 2025, and it should be clear that in this big domain of technological evolution, there is one part of this domain that is this one, is that one that normally we call that one of the digital technologies. Digital is coming from digit, 0, 1, the way of transforming our knowledge in a list of numbers, 0 and 1. And for sure, in the last year, we are living in a digital society. A digital society that more and more is impacted itself by the evolution of these type of technologies. This idea is not just mine, or is not mine. In Europe, it's some years that we are talking about the fact that we should find a way, we should find that sweet spot that exists between the fact that we would like to transform ourselves in a more sustainable society, the green or sustainable transition, is something that could happen also thanks to the adoption and the utilization, or the proper adoption, the proper utilizations of another big transition that is happening, that is that one of the adoption of digital technology. And not by chance, in Europe, the concept of twin transition or green and digital, it's quite common. When we talk about this transition, obviously behind there is the big ideas, or the ideas of a continuous industrial evolution that is happening, in which step by step technology has introduced some changes and some improvement. All of us, we have studied the first and the second industrial revolution. We're living the last 50 years as a continuous evolution of these. That was starting for sure in the 70s with the introduction of automation, and then step by step has evolved in the last more or less 20 years towards a more digitalization, till the point that in Europe is at least 14 years that we talk about Industry 4.0 as the idea of the industrial revolution, the first one based on digital and the adoption of digital technologies. And till the point that more recently, again in Europe, we talk about Industry 5.0, the next wave, as it is said, in which, again, our society, industrial society, should evolve, is evolving, thanks to what? Thanks to, again, elaboration and improvement in technologies that become more and more, let's say, human-based or human-centric. If I can, honestly speaking, I don't like, even if my lab is called an Industry 4.0 lab, but I don't like this way of saying. It doesn't exist in my modest opinion, or I will leave to the historians, let's say, to define when the first of the fifth industrial revolution was happening. As an engineer, what I can notice is that, for sure, we're living, since more or less the last 40, 50 years, in a domain in which technology every day is pushing us behind our limit. Dot. And is allowing us, is giving us solutions, methods, tools for making our life, for making our work normally more efficient, less difficult, and generally speaking, faster. Then if it is a new revolution or whatever, I will leave to the historian to define it. Honestly speaking, also the third industrial revolution has been codified more or less 30 years after that it was happening. So probably we don't have to wait 30 years, but I will leave to others to define if we are living the third, the fifth, or as in Japan, they are already saying the sixth. The point is, anyhow, if, as usual, this evolution and revolution is happening, being guided and being pushed by technologies, which are these technologies? As I said, personally believe that the main type of technologies that have an impact in our society are that one belonging to the big digital domain. There is not just one. Here you see I'm playing a bit with the words. Now, here you see many words from different, let's say, technologies. Honestly speaking, some of them also very different and with different background and origin, I mean. But all of them, at the end of the day, they have the right to belong to the society and to provide support to the society that we are living. When we talk about technology, guys, we talk about these. And not by chance, I'm putting many examples from factories, since maybe something that we don't see, but these technologies are not just changing how we buy our stuff, or how we buy a ticket, or how we rent a car, but are changing everything and are changing also the most traditional spaces like that one of factories. Now, what these technologies are doing and how they are evolving, there are several ways of saying. This is my favorite one. There are technologies that more and more are in our hands. They have a lot of computing power. This smartphone is some thousand times much powerful than the computer was launching the man on the moon. This smartphone is fully connected with many other devices. And with this smartphone or other devices, I can see almost everything before that is existing in real life. And last point, last things in this moment seems to be new, even if it's not. This smartphone, let's say, is bringing more and more intelligence in. No? Then, okay, if this is how technologies are evolving, but then practically what they are doing and why they are impacting in our society. Personally, and this is my personal representation that is very simplified, I believe that these technologies are useful for 5 activities. The first one, they support knowledge management. They support the fact that we can store through data our knowledge somewhere in a way that make it quite easy to reuse such knowledge. This is what humankind was doing since thousands of years with libraries. Now it's done in our computers. And this is making very simple the possibility to share knowledge. Second important point, as it is happening right now, through these technologies, we are connected, we humans. Sorry, there are mics that are going down. Can you listen to me?
Yeah,
Hello?
yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, clearly.
I was saying the technologies are giving us the possibility to be connected, to be in touch one with the others, even if we are distributed and far one from the other. And guys, I don't know what you think, but this is quite new in the human society, to be so in touch with the others, even if we are not living in the same city. Third, it's not just a matter of being in touch among us, but also with objects. That for me is not new. I mean, I did my PhD 25 years ago, actually at what in that time were called the intelligent product. No? That now can be called a smart product, IoT-based, or whatever you want to say. But it's evident what is happening. We can control, see, monitor, check, evaluate almost everything on distance at a very reasonable cost. This is, honestly speaking, for automation, this is not new. Since the 50s, in factories, automation was supporting the possibility to monitor resources on distance, but was expensive. Today is not expensive at all and can be done with our smartphone. Next, with digital technologies, generally speaking, we can generate more design solutions and check them. In the domain of engineering, it's very clear. Now, instead of building a car and doing a crash test that anyhow should be done for regulations, we can make it in virtual. And so we can generate so many cars as we want. But this is valid for almost everything around us. We can experiment, test new product, new solution, new business models. Before that, everything is really happening in practice. And this is giving us, as designers, as engineers, as persons that they are designing and building a new society, very powerful tool. Last one, obviously, being back to the origin of the third industrial revolution, technologies are with us and are interacting with us. Automation is not only this picture, the robot working alone in a factory. Automation is happening when we book and we take an Amazon package in the Amazon Docker. This is automation. And all these solutions, all these systems are bringing us or are giving us new possibilities that before they were not existing. So these are, in short, as I said, this is my personal representation, and for sure there are other ways of explaining it, much more interesting than mine. But this is what technologies are doing. As I said, what we can do today is try to find the so-called sweet spot. This definition is not mine. The first time that I read it, it was 3 years ago, actually, and was in a while taken also by several, let's say, European Commission documents and whatever. That space in which these two transition, the digital one, the sustainability one, they can meet, and in which digital technologies, at the end of the day, they can amplify sustainability. And I have the personal idea that, I'm making this short, digital technologies
can increase for sure the productivity, can support the new innovation, and can increase sustainability. Now, as I was saying at the beginning, more or less, now I'm next to the end, sorry for being on time. If you remember, I was mentioning using as a reference the natural capitalism book, these four actions, these four, better to say, strategies for sustainability. And here I have my 5, just in my list, activities that digital technologies ensure they can do. What does it mean that support data and knowledge management could give us the possibility to reduce the impact? Said like this seems to be general, in reality something very practical. Reducing the impact is coming from what? It's coming from the first that we should evaluate what is an impact, measure it, and then take some action for reducing it. If we don't have a space in which we store the impact and in which, more important, we store the knowledge of the project, the initiative, the solutions that we develop for reducing the impact, how it will be possible to be effective in this strategy? Or another quite simple comment. As I said, one of the typical solution activities that digital technologies are enabling us is actually that one of monitoring and connecting research. Again, just reducing the impact. How can I reduce the impact if I'm not measuring? When I'm saying reducing the impact and measuring it, let's take a very practical example. Let's take a factory. That is my domain. How you can say if a factory is polluting? First, you have to look at the different flows that this factory is generating, from energy consumption to waste generation. The first activity that you have to do is to measure, evaluate. And how you can measure and evaluate pollution if you are monitoring how much you are polluting? And how you monitor, actually, thanks today, since some years, to technologies, sensors that are monitoring what is happening through your waste channels. As well, just another comment on this one. We said that one possible strategy for being more sustainable is that one of changing the business model, for example, servitizing it. There is a very famous example in servitization, that is that one, as I was mentioning already, of the car sharing. Okay? The fact that instead of buying a car, you will rent a car when it is needed. Now, I don't know if you have used one of the modern, let's say, solution for car rental, from Car2Go to Movie to Mugi to NLGo and so on. Not by chance, all these solutions, they are using a list of practical digital technologies for doing what? For monitoring and giving access to the cars. There is a famous example that I'm always mentioning. I guess that you know Car2Go. Car2Go is a brand quite famous in Europe and US of car sharing. Car2Go has been invented 25 years ago in San Francisco by Volkswagen, by Mercedes, the same company that is owning Smart. So for more than 24 years, since the last year they sold the company, Mercedes was serving the market, sometimes in some places selling Smart, in others renting them. First important part of the history. Second important part of the history, the Mercedes Smart experience as a servitized one So the Car2Go company, that was a brand of Mercedes, is existing since 2000, but for many years it was not positive, or at least not positive enough. It became positive, and it was exploding, let's say, positively around in the global market when they have adopted monitoring resources for ranking the cars. When smartphone has been introduced as enabler and as key of the cars, the standardization model was starting. Now, today seems to be common. With this smartphone, you can book a car, you can book a bicycle, you can book a scooter, whatever. But this is actually another example in which the possibility to introduce a more sustainable business model is fully based on the adoption of some capabilities of digital technologies. More or less, not more or less, I did my personal list, and for all of these digital capabilities, as I'm calling them, we can always find trace and connection with these sustainable strategies. This is, but I mean, for time reason, I would like to stop here. So one of my research interests in this period is actually going ahead with this analysis. Now, having now quite clearly in mind what does it mean being sustainable. And I said, one proper way of being more sustainable is that one of being circular. What we are doing, what I'm doing with my other colleagues here, also in our labs, is that one of step by step experimenting, adopting technologies for enabling new circular model. And step by step, I have to say that we are accumulating knowledge on that. Not by chance, also thanks to many European projects like yours. This is, sorry, what I was preparing as a conversation for today, based on the title that we have discussed some months ago. And honestly speaking, also considering what is interesting for me as a researcher and as a professor. So I don't know if you have any question, comment, curiosity, whatever.
Okay, so thank you so much, Sergio, for your um, interesting and very timely and brilliant presentation. I see that I have a question, but I will do it later. We'll ask that later. I see that Christophe asked something in the chat, but also raised his hand now. So please, Christophe, you're
Yes.
free to.
Thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering, you say in the beginning, sustainability is a function of time. But I can imagine if you use something that you can recycle completely, but you use it only a short amount of time, it may be more sustainable than something that you use a long time. So I think the use of resources is also important. Okay, you mentioned that in your presentation. So where is the balance that you make? It's sometimes
No,
difficult.
I fully agree with you, and not by chance. The third design sustainable strategy is about this, what I was calling improving the productivity of resources. So it's for sure, it's a matter of, it's for sure a function, as we are saying, of the utilization of resources. The good point is that more let's say the function is improving, let's say, the rate thanks to technological evolution. This should be said, but I fully agree that it's a matter of also of the user of that. And not by chance, for example, I can mention this. One of the area, one in which we have now 5, if I'm not wrong, or 4 European projects, is actually an example of this. That is that one of, we are working with the electronic industry, and we are working for supporting, for introducing, or for experimenting, let's say experimenting new ways, better ways to recycle electronic components. Since at least for today, electronic components, the typical motherboard is actually an example of a resource from which we are not able to reuse. For sure, it's not possible to reuse everything, but unfortunately, the rate of what we can reuse is very low. And this is actually supporting your point, no? That sustainability is also a function of utilization of resources. As I said, what we are doing now in some of our projects is to work on this and to be precise on the recycled technologies and the reutilization technologies for allowing a better reutilization of resources.
Perhaps I have a second question also, if I may. I have the impression with the revolution in artificial intelligence and with the advent of data centers that the industry might become less sustainable. Or is that a temporary effect?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's the typical rebound effect. And personally, I'm not doing research on this, but not by in some way by chance or by interest better. I was reading actually some publication about that. That given the increase of demand at the end of the day of artificial intelligence, we are not paying attention again to how we are using resources. And not by something that was intriguing to me, the amount of energy that should be used for freezing, let's say, for cooling the data center. That is a typical rebound effect. I agree with you. I have to say that I don't have, in that sense, an answer on what should be done. Also, because I cannot consider myself enough experting at all in that sense. But I agree with your point.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you don't, I have a question. And oh, please, Stefano, go on.
No, I have it, but you can go first. It's okay.
Okay, so basically, I am a social scientist, so I'm sorry, and probably this question would be perceived as a little bit naive or trivial. But I was wondering, how can organizations ensure that digital innovation does not simply lead to what is called greenwashing and or efficiency without responsibility? So, which are the practice that can help. So, what are the practice that this organization can implement to avoid this kind of effect, which is the greenwashing or the efficiency without any actual responsibility, in your experience?
Sorry, Omar, you said that digital, or you mentioned the digital technologies are bringing to greenwashing? No, maybe it's sustainability interest that could be just answered as greenwashing. Now, first point. Then that digital technologies could bring, they are bringing productivity, let's say, and what to do with this productivity. So less resources needed. It's for sure. It's a big, let's say, point. But is why I guess that there is no one of the two, digitalization and sustainability, is more important than the other one. They should
Okay,
be
that was the question. Yeah, that was the question.
in this period, I'm working with some companies in several type of projects, from research project to, let's say, training project, actually for supporting them for making particular sustainability, for making two stuff. From one side, making sustainability something real and not just a greenwashing one, even if the possibility is always behind the corner. And the other one is also to use digital technologies. I mean, the risk is there. Then it's up to to what the company is doing and implementing it to avoid such risk. The good point, I believe that companies that they are properly managed and that they see this as a real value, or they could avoid such risk.
Okay. Okay, so there are no such a thing as guidelines or good practice for
No, there are a list of
avoiding.
good practice and guidelines in just staying in sustainability. Not by sustainability, it's a domain that today is generating a lot of confusion sometimes in companies. For a very practical, at least is my point of view. Sustainability is nothing new. It's something that is existing since many years, and not by chance, many model, framework, practices, guidelines, normative, regulation, whatever has been codified and defined. The point that some companies are approaching sustainability domain today, that is not bad, is good, finally, is that I mean, it's happening that some companies are discovering just in right now. But if they follow most of the guidelines, rules and practice, so-called sustainability framework, they should be able to avoid the greenwashing.
Thank you so much.
That's my point.
Stefano?
Yeah. I'm not sure about the question. Maybe it's a bit off topic and larger than the focus of today, but I was thinking, as you were saying right now, also sustainability is not new, and also as a concept, it has evolved a lot, right? From maybe early focus on environmentalism or green instances to more complex idea of sustainability, embracing also social dimension, economic dimension, and so on. So I was wondering if in the approach you presented in your research, are these aspects also something you are taking into account and somehow are able to measure or
the social aspect, you mean?
I mean, other aspects other than environmental impact or optimization of costs and resources, because of course, I mean, it's a complex phenomenon, right? So it's
my personal answer is that obviously sustainability is a broad concept, and what we call the social one, it's very relevant. And not by chance, for example, in our institution, in our school, there are many colleagues dealing with this. Today, actually, I have here now an event with some African university about social sustainability. But said this is not strictly speaking, my topic. As an industrial engineer that I'm teaching production system design, I'm more on the technology and production technology. And one of the first impact that production technologies are generating and should be avoided is actually that one of environmental impact. Obviously, there are also some social impacts, sorry, this should be said, but are out of my experience in some way. And anyhow, it is the case that in Europe, for example, just staying in Europe, we still have factories that are polluting. Maybe thanks to God, and thanks to our revolution, we don't have, or we have less companies that are generating bad social impact. But for sure, we have still to do a lot of work in the environmental side. So it is why it's my, honestly speaking, main interest.
No, it's totally fine. Of course, I was just wondering if somehow these other dimensions may be intersected also with the focus on the production or something.
They should be. I guess that they should be. I have honestly to admit that I was not paying attention to.
It's okay. It's totally fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, then I think we are running late. So
yes, and I should move to the next activity if you don't mind.
Yeah. Thank you so much to Professor Terzi. Sergio, thank you so much. And we will see each other next time. So thank you again, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thanks again for the invitation, and thanks for listening and for sharing your thought. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.